Dear listener, my name is Adia and I'm a huge fan of the grace of God. It has been such a privilege experiencing it, especially when I began to be more intentional in my pursuit of Christ Jesus. Welcome to Witnesses of Grace. I want to invite anyone going through the roller coaster of life to join me on the same journey through the lens of the amazing grace of God. In today's episode of Witnesses of Grace, I want to talk about my story and tap a little bit into why I created this platform. I will be telling it in two parts, and this video is the first part of the story. And if you're blessed by it, please do tune in every other Monday for a new video where I'll be talking about stories of grace, not just in the Bible, but also in my everyday life. So without further ado, let's dive right in. My story began in West Africa, Mali. My parents were in Timbuktu by the time I was born, and they were actually just getting introduced to the gospel around that time. They were very much newborn, still studying. I am not sure, I think it was missionaries, but my mom has her own, they have their own story, and my mom wrote a book about her testimony called Témoin de la Grâce. It's in French. And that translated in English means Witness of Grace. And that book is basically what inspired the name of this platform, Witnesses of Grace. And I made it plural because I believe that I'm not going to be the only one sharing my story on this platform. And by God's grace, hopefully we're going to have so many different testimonies, just not just my story, but the story of the people around me and whoever God blesses with his grace. I would say that I grew up in a Christian household because I don't remember a time where I was not a Christian. And so I am second generation Christian. The first 11 years of my life happened actually in Mali. And it was very interesting growing up because if you know anything about Mali, you would know that it is predominantly a Muslim population. So it's mainly Islamic. The state itself is not Islamic, but Islam is embedded in like the culture and everything there. And so it was an interesting dynamic for me to grow up like as the minority as a Christian. And Christians in Mali are like, 10% of the population, not even. And on top of that, it's like most of them were Catholics. Our family was Protestant. And so we were like the minority of the minority in the country. And so it was an interesting dynamic, but I didn't necessarily sense the difference as much when I was hanging out with my friends. We never really talked about or even if we did talk about God, I don't know. I just kind of assumed it was like, I don't know, the same God or whatnot. But I do remember living out certain differences. Like during the weekends, for example, their Sunday in Mali is like Fridays. So on Fridays would be half days because people would go to mosques. And so, yeah, they had their services on those days. So even the official professional world was is still built around that. And so I kind of grew up knowing that and just knowing nothing else. But I also had my own religious life where we would go to church every Sunday. We never missed a Sunday, by the way. My mom was very she was always so excited about like going to church, and so were we as well. And so it was fun times. I don't remember per se the moment I got saved. Like I don't know that this was the moment I got saved for sure, but I always like to say that this was the moment I got saved because I remember it vividly to this very day. We used to gather around my mom, I think weekly or bi-weekly, and my mom would be like teaching us the Bible in a very like engaging way. Like she was very good with kids in general, actually. She worked at World Vision at the time, and I remember she worked a lot with kids, like local kids, and like she would do a lot of mission work locally. So she would travel here and there, sometimes, but like a lot of her work would be centered around just like going to speak to kids and like, giving them toys and, distributing all these things. And I remember sometimes she'd come back home and like, those toy phones, like those Barbie phones that would like make the weirdest sounds, and now, like, now that I think of it, but like she would have like a pack of those, um coming back from like her missions trip, and then we would be like, yo, can we have one of those? Like, this is so cool. Anyways, those were some good times. So yeah, she was very good with kids. And so I remember one day she was just explaining, I don't know whose story exactly in the Bible it was, but I just remember listening to her and just being completely mesmerized. Like, I was like just sitting there thinking, wow, what a mighty God. I think she was talking about like the splitting of the sea. And I just was so amazed by the mightiness of God. The idea of splitting the sea for the Israelites to go through. I think it was like a combination of those, like, the compilation of the stories throughout the week, and then I think we reached the story of Moses, and the Israelites and the like faced by the Red Sea. Joseph's story stood out to me because of his faith. I was like, wow, Joseph's faith is so cool. Like, he remained faithful for years, guys. Like, Joseph was betrayed by his entire family, all of his siblings, and got sold into slavery in Egypt, and went through a lot there, and got betrayed by, like, I don't know, like his prison mates, and nobody really thought of him. He was forgotten for the longest time, but he always trusted in God. He always knew that there was something bigger, for him. He always knew that the Lord would deliver him. And when the Lord came through for him, I was like, wow, this God can really be counted on. Because it was my first time hearing these stories, and so I was like, wow, what an amazing God. And so I was so surprised and mesmerized that I literally told myself in that moment, as I was listening, that I would never, ever lose faith in God ever again. The fact that I just remember that moment, and I just kind of like, in my gut, in my heart, I just knew that I wasn't going to go anywhere, and that I was going to have the same faith as Joseph, and that I was going to believe God for splitting seas, and that I was just going to, just have this amazing faith in God. And for the rest of my life, I decided I'm just not going to not believe in God, because there's no point not believing in him, right? There's just no point. You got nothing to lose. You know what I mean? Like, there's literally nothing to lose. I don't know who mentioned this. Like, I think I heard of it when I was in university, where like one of the philosophers was talking about how literally believing in God will not harm you, in the sense that if you believe in him and he happens to be real, you gain the whole world. And if you believe in him and he happens to not be real, you just move on about your life. But if you do not believe in him and he happens to not be real, nothing happens still. But if you do not believe in him and he happens to be real, guys, like, that is the worst outcome that you can ever face. And so, anyways, I just wanted to put that out there, because when I first heard that philosopher's statement, it was very, very interesting to me, and like it really stuck out to me. And I was like, you know what? You literally got nothing to lose anyway. From there, that was the moment I started believing in God, and for real, for real. And I would say that I got saved in that moment, because in that moment I just felt like I wasn't going anywhere. You know what I mean? I knew I wasn't going anywhere. And so that was around 2007, 2008. I was like around 9 to 10 years old. So yeah, our life in Mali, our Christian life in Mali, was very full of just activities and fun times. Easter times were like really, really cool. We'd go to church and we would have like these awesome activities. Church was like a little, like a family of its own. Obviously, we also had our families, like, since we lived in a like Islamic country, like, we would also, by respect, we would go visit our families during Ramadan, or tabaski, those big moments in Islam as well. And so yeah, it was very interesting. Like for whatever reason, we lived in peace with everybody around us, and we never really had any issue being like any, like, at least for me, like in my world, I didn't really have any issue growing up, or like my parents did a really good job just I guess hiding their problems. But I do know that my mom fought a big fight when she came in the faith. Guys, go read her book. It's called Témoin la Grâce. And I will put a link on where the book is being sold. And I think it's mainly sold in France because she published it when she was in France. So I didn't really feel anything when I was in Mali. I didn't really sense any conflict per se. I had a great time while I was in Mali. August 2010 came around, and we actually had to move from Mali to Kenya because my dad got a promotion and basically started working internationally in his field. And so he actually was stationed in Somalia when we were in Kenya, and since Somalia was not a family-based country, we stayed in Kenya, in a nearby country, which was kind of interesting. Like, we weren't used to not being, living away from our dad, but it was cool. Every time he came around, we would go on road trips. We went to Mombasa, and then we went to Masai Mara. And they were both road trips. Guys, road trips are so fun, especially with your family. It's reminding me of like such good memories. Guys, safaris. If you're in Kenya and you like don't go on a safari, like, what's the point? Anyways, but there is so much more to do in Kenya than just safaris, but safaris are like top notch. But yeah, and Kenya was an interesting season for me personally because it was a transition. It was a huge transition for me, like moving from the Malian school system, because I went to, like, honestly, I've done so many different schools because I think I did like the Turkish system as well while I was still in Mali. But I remember doing the local Malian system, which was in French. And I also remember doing a completely different type of system as well. And I think it was the Turkish system. And it was a very interesting um, it was a very interesting school. And so I transitioned, I believe, from the Turkish system to the French system. And I don't know, for me particular, and like my siblings didn't do any Turkish system for whatever reason. I don't know why. Like, it was always me who was always like changing like schools. Like, the change in my life has been crazy. Like, up until now, I've attended over 10 different schools in my entire life, um, to say the least. But the toughest transition for me was moving from Mali to Kenya and then having to enter the French school. I faced a lot of bullying and social isolation there. It wasn't the best season of my life. And at the time, obviously, I knew God. We would go to church and all that stuff. But like I didn't really have like a personal relationship with God. And it's not like God was a part of my life 24/7 enough for me to even think about bringing it into prayer with Him. I honestly just thought that, like, I don't know, this is life. I have to go through this, and this is it. Like, I remember one day coming home and being so like sad that my mom saw it, and like she's like, "Are you okay? Like, what's going on?" And I spoke about the bullying, and my mom was so frustrated. She like went to the school and she complained, and it made it a big thing. Now that I think about it, I'm like, oh. but um but like, I probably was not the only one going through it. Like, a lot of bullying is a thing, and a lot of people go through it. And it was just kind of like my portion, I guess, at the time. And I would say that it opened up an emotional wound that, like, I think it was a trauma for me. Like, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I definitely went about my relationships for the longest time since then, you know, out of that trauma that I faced. So basically, a lot of my relationships and just the way I would behave, a lot of my behavior socially, were kind of um, like the outcome of what I faced at that time, and that went on for the longest time. So I was just trying to mask what happened and move on from there because I didn't even know that I was wounded, let alone seek healing. So in August of 2012, I was born in August. So like I always remember the dates because we always moved around my birthday. We moved to Kenya August 2010, and August 2012, my dad changed stations to Senegal, Dakar. And this time we were able to all live together again, which was pretty nice. By that time, my only relationship, my only like spiritual life was basically prayer at bedtime, prayer before food, and yeah, Sunday services. Still did not really know God personally. I just went about my life. I knew that he existed, and I knew that he was amazing and awesome, and I knew all the character traits about him and all that. You can know about someone, you can know about, but you like having a relationship with the person is completely different. And so I didn't have that basically. But yeah, so in Senegal, I was very lukewarm actually in my faith. I still loved God. I went to church and even began serving as a member of the choir there. But I didn't really understand his love enough to know just how much freedom I had in him. I was feeling, honestly, like because I was so lukewarm, I was feeling burdened with the weight of my sins because I'm like, okay, I know you're a holy God. I know that you don't tolerate sin, and I know that you praise righteousness, and I know that you want us to be good, holy, and righteous people. But then, how do I do that? I just thought that I needed to be perfect, but at the same time, I just wasn't perfect, and so I was trying so hard to just be perfect, to be good, but it was discouraging because I wasn't able to do it. And so like I just lived this lukewarm life, but deep down I just had this unease, like that, how am I ever going to be able to please God, because I'm not able to just be righteous. I'm not able to be holy because he's so holy, right? And so I was filled with so much guilt whenever I sinned. And it kept me distant from God because I would just think that, he's disappointed in me. And sometimes I would also be in a phase where I'm like, okay, I'm doing so well with God right now. And I'm in such a good place with God. Like I would just be so proud of myself and proud of my good works because I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm doing so well. But then it was just a matter of time until like I just, crashed again. And so I just went about this like ups and downs of just like trying to build my own walk with God. But it wasn't enough. And I was tired, I was really tired, but I didn't really know what to do. I didn't really know any better. But I also didn't realize that I was trying to earn his love. Meanwhile, we are still in Senegal. My mom gets sick. She goes from perfectly healthy to hospitalized. Then she gradually begins to lose her mobility. She couldn't walk properly anymore. So my dad brings her to France for treatment, and she ends up staying there for about a year. So that was like the longest time that my siblings and I were ever away from my mom. It was very interesting season, a very like unstable season. So this is happening. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. My mom is in France for treatments, but I'm staying positive. because my mom herself was very positive. She wasn't behaving as if like it was the end of the world, you know? She was just moving about her life. I didn't just hope that she will get better. I knew she was going to get better, guys. I knew she was going to get better because I knew the God who split the sea for the Israelites in the desert. And I just had faith. I had so much faith in God, especially since I was praying so earnestly for her, like the whole time. So my mom is still in France, and at this point, my older sister, she graduated and she had gone to Switzerland for university. But my younger siblings, they remain in the French system. But my parents decide that I would be changing, along with my cousin who lived with us at the time, would be changing to a different school system. Since now we are reaching high school, my mom thought it would be a good idea if we switched me to the American system so I could strengthen my English and be bilingual. And so we decided to look at schools, all the American schools in Dakar. The two main ones that we knew were ISD. For anybody who's lived in Dakar, you probably have heard of it. And there was also Dakar Academy. So ISD stood for International School of Dakar. And then there was Dakar Academy, DA. If you're from DA, hi. So yeah, my mom's like, okay, we're going to transfer you, me specifically, because I had reached high school, from the French system to the English system because I want my kids to be bilingual. So my mom is still in France, and we decide to sign me up for Dakar Academy because Dakar Academy is actually a Christian school, a missionary Christian school. And so I was fine with that. I was excited. I was like, okay, cool, new place, let's go. But guys, another culture shock. The French system is very different from the American system. Shocks for me was people smiling at strangers. Like, I was saying this the other day. I don't know, it's not like in the French culture, and it's not necessarily even in the African culture like that, for strangers to be smiling at another stranger. So that was very interesting to me because, like, I remember, you know, when you're changing schools and you're kind of nervous and you're worried about, like, is this environment for me, like socially? And I already have this social wound in me, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to have to go through another season of isolation. I don't want this and that. And I'm just so worried, because I was actually kind of doing well at the French school in Senegal, and things were going pretty well for me. Hence kind of like my lukewarm life too. And it was kind of sad. I felt a bit sad that I had to leave my friends there, and then now I have to. So I wasn't like very invested socially. I was just like, okay, this new school, new environment. I was excited about that, but I wasn't necessarily excited socially because I was like, what's going to happen? And I just didn't know what to expect. But then I stepped into the school for the first time. I think my dad was in the office signing me up. And I'm just like walking around the campus. The campus is empty because it's summertime, but it's a dorm, like they have dorms on campus. And so you see a few people walking around, and I cross paths with this girl, and she just looks at me and she smiles. Guys, I'm just like, me? Like, and that just kind of made my day, and it low-key made my entire year. And so that's something about the North American culture that I just want to praise, guys. Keep it up. To my smilers out there, keep it up. So I started attending this school, and guys, I have zero experience being in the Christian environment this much, right? Because my life as a Christian was just church on Sundays, school throughout the week, prayer at bedtime, prayer before lunch, and that was it. And yeah, of course, like go to choir practice and all that stuff. But it wasn't necessarily like 24/7 be with Jesus kind of life. And so the first time I experienced that was at that school. We would be in class, and the teachers would just be like, let's take some time to pray before we begin the class. We would do prayers before games. We would have outreaches throughout because it's a missionary school, right? So like they would go out locally. We would have these traveling times locally to just go and preach the word and sing Christian songs and build churches. Like I partook in the building of a church in the deepest depths of Senegal somewhere. And it was amazing, amazing times. And like socially there, guys, I met amazing, beautiful people there that I remained friends with for the longest time. To this very day, I'm still in touch with like some of my girlfriends, that we connected there. And so like you really just in hindsight, like in the moment, you don't really see the work of God, but when you look back, you're just like, wow, God truly, really was at work, and he was just in every moment. That smile, I didn't know it was God. You don't think that that's God, but then you realize the comfort it brought you. The girl probably does not even remember. Probably has no idea the impact she had on me. But I will remember this forever, guys. And so, like, it really was God at work in my life the entire time, and I didn't know. My season there is basically what led me to being baptized, because I felt so well-rounded. I living Christ at school, living Christ at home, living Christ on the weekends at church. I was very well-rounded. I felt very well-rounded. It was like God pretty much orchestrated everything and paved the way for me to take a step towards him, for good. Not long after that, baptism season came around, and I did not hesitate to jump on the opportunity. I started attending the courses in October and got baptized at the sea in 2014. By that time, my mom actually had gotten back from France and got to witness my baptism in person. And that was literally cherry on top of the cake for me. But when my mom got back, however, she didn't look any more in shape than she had left. If anything, it seemed like things were just getting worse for her. She'd still be going places for different treatments, but she only kept getting worse. Next thing I know, she's not able to speak properly anymore. I wasn't as much worried as I was just wondering when she was going to be better. I was praying, like, obviously God is going to come through in the same way he split the sea for the Israelites. He was going to come through for us because we are praying, we're having faith, we're trying our best to like please him, right? And so my mom was in this state for about 3 months before she had to get rushed to Kenya in the beginning of February of 2015. That was the last time I ever saw my mom. On the 26th of February 2015, I received news that my mom had passed away in Kenya. She had been battling a brain tumor for the past 2 years of her life.